say, raggedy, raggedy, raggedy man. You don't have to dance, just say that word. Let's try it.
Raggedy, raggedy, raggedy man.
Oh, the raggedy man. He works for Pa, and he's the goodest man ever you saw. He comes to our house every day and waters the horses and feeds them hay. Then he opens the shed, and we always laugh when he drives out our little old wobbly calf. And then, if our hired girl says he can, he milks the cow for Elizabeth Ann. Ain't he an awful good raggedy man?
Raggedy, raggedy, raggedy man.
Why, the raggedy man, he is so good. He splits the kindling and chops the wood. Then he spades in our garden too, and does most things that boys can't do. Why, he clumbed clean up in our big tree and shook an apple down for me, and another 2 for Elizabeth Ann, and another 2 for the raggedy man. Ain't he an awful kind raggedy man?
Raggedy, raggedy, raggedy man.
Now the raggedy man, he knows most rhymes and tells them, if I be good sometimes, knows about giants and griffins and elves and knows about the squidgy-cum squeeze that swallows themselves. And right by the pump in our pasture lot, he showed me the hole at the Wunks is got, and lives way deep in the ground, and can turn into me, or Elizabeth Ann, or Ma, or Pa, or the raggedy man. Ain't he a funny old raggedy man?
Raggedy, raggedy, raggedy man.
Now the raggedy man, one time he was making a little bow and arrow for me, and he said, when you're big, like your Pa is, and you go to keep a fine store like his, be a rich merchant and wear fine clothes, or whatever you go to be, goodness knows. Then, he laughed at Elizabeth Ann, and I said, I must go to be a raggedy man. I must go to be a nice raggedy man.
Raggedy, raggedy, raggedy man.
Thank you. That's from 1888. Now, what do you fine folks think of this weather today? Beautiful?
Beautiful.
It's a bit warm, but
Warm? Well, it is August, man. You know, it could be 95 degrees and 100% humidity in August. This is pretty mild, don't you think? You know what they say, if you don't like the weather in Indiana, move. You'll stick around 5 minutes, it'll change. I do prefer all the different seasons in our Hoosier state. You know my favorite time of year? Fall. Not just because I was born in October, but when the leaves change colors, they resemble my best. Crisp, cool feeling in the air. Everything is so beautiful, so spectacular. I truly believe Indiana during autumn is the most exquisite place on God's green earth. When the frost is over, and the clacking of the guineas, and the clucking of the hens, and the rooster's hallelujah as he tiptoes on the fence. Oh, it's then the times a feller is a feeling at his best, with the rising sun to greet him from a night of peaceful rest, as the air is so appetizing, and the landscape through the haze of a crisp and sunny morning of the early autumn days is a picture that no painter has the color into mind. When the frost is on the pump, and the flowers in the shop. That's from 1911.
That he burnt every single family portrait that he and his 1,000-man troop could find in the Berkeley plantation, and burned them all to the ground, so that there would be no actual painting that would survive for Benjamin Harrison V. Fortunately, when the family fled before the attack, one painting was taken, and that's all we have of Benjamin Harrison V, my great-grandfather. And not only did the British, under the leadership of Benedict Arnold, destroy every painting of every Harrison family member, but they destroyed all of the furnishings inside the plantation, and they destroyed much of the building that consisted of the Berkeley plantation. And in a most disgusting manner, Benedict Arnold personally and his troops used the Harrison cows that were being raised on the farm for target practice. And very early got involved in Virginia politics. And ultimately, he chaired the committee of the whole. Anything that was going to be decided by chairing the committee of the whole was to review the proposed Declaration of Independence. Now, there was a subcommittee of 5. In fact, it was called the Committee of the 5. That was assigned to come up with a Declaration of Independence. And Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, and John Adams were 3 of the most famous of the 5. And Thomas Jefferson, of course, as we know through history, played the most crucial role in draftsmanship. But there were changes made by Benjamin Franklin and John Adams in the Committee of the 5. And then it went to my great-grandfather's Committee of the Whole. And they made further changes. And when all of those changes were incorporated, my great-grandfather, Benjamin Harrison V, stood in front of all of the founding fathers and became the first citizen to read out loud in our history the entire Declaration of Independence. The first human being to read it out loud in its entirety. That is a fact that we are most proud of in our Harrison tradition. Wow, can you imagine doing that? And after my great-grandfather read the Declaration of Independence, the founding fathers put it to a vote, and it was unanimously adopted without any dissent in the Second Continental Congress. My great-grandfather obviously played, as I've just described, the most important role in that particular situation. He was very close to a number of the founding fathers. In fact, during the Second Continental Congress, his roommate during most of the proceedings was none other than George Washington. Can you imagine having George Washington as your roommate? Wow, what an incredible experience anyone could ever have. And that's how close my great-grandfather was to the founding fathers in the role that he played. And then he went on, after the American Revolution succeeded, he went on and was elected governor of Virginia. So I wanted to share that prominent figure in the Harrison family lineage in terms of dedication to leadership and paying whatever price there would be in terms of making the revolution succeed and to help create the new country afterwards. Now, my grandfather, William Henry Harrison, was born at the Berkeley plantation. Ultimately, being in the Army and other responsibilities took him away from the Berkeley plantation when he reached adulthood, but certainly the Berkeley plantation played a very important part in his early life. Now, my grandfather, William Henry Harrison, ultimately, as you know, became the 9th President of the United States. And his life story is quite interesting, equally interesting as my great-grandfather. Obviously, he was the first governor of the Indiana Territory. Now, when we talk about the Indiana Territory, let me just say something very quickly about that history. We had the 13 colonies after the Revolution was successful, and a gigantic parcel of land called the Northwest Territory. Ultimately, the Northwest Territory was divided up between the Ohio Territory and the Indiana Territory. And the Indiana Territory included the states of Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin, and parts of Minnesota. Ultimately, those states were parceled out from the Indiana Territory. And my grandfather was the first territorial governor for that Indiana Territory, and he served in that capacity for nearly 10 years and did many things and accomplished a lot. And this was a very difficult time period in our new nation. Biggest challenge was how would the new country interact with the many Indian tribes, especially to the west of the Alleghenies, and what would ultimately happen with the expansion of our country. And there are many, many stories of William Henry Harrison in his interaction with a variety of Indian tribes. Both good and bad stories could be spoken of. Now, Battleground, Indiana is where the Tippecanoe battle took place, and the Harrison forces ultimately won. Harrison's forces marched towards Prophettown, and the prophet sent out emissaries saying, look, we want to have peace. Let's delay this. Let's delay the battle and try to work out arrangements. And my grandfather agreed to do that, but he was very suspicious. And his suspicion was correct, because the prophet decided the day that this peace was set to that evening send tribal warriors secretly into my grandfather's military camp with the intent of personally assassinating my grandfather. It was stopped by my grandfather's soldiers. But then, shortly after that, certain of the Indian tribes associated with the prophet initiated battle against my grandfather. That's a very famous military engagement. My grandfather was also not only the Indiana Territorial Governor for 10 years, but also was one of the most famous military commanders in the War of 1812, where Great Britain once again tried to seize back what they had lost in the American Revolution. And there was a great battle that my grandfather fought in the War of 1812 against Tecumseh himself. Now, Tecumseh was down south recruiting other Indian tribes to fight the new America, and my grandfather fought only the prophet at the Tippecanoe battleground. And that did not involve Tecumseh himself. But Tecumseh quickly aligned himself with the British forces in the War of 1812, and my grandfather, in one of the biggest battles of the War of 1812, defeated and in fact killed Tecumseh in that particular battle. And that's one of the most famous fought in the War of 1812, and that put my grandfather really on the map in terms of national notoriety. And it still survives today. Only 2 presidents in American history can lay claim to founding a college or university. The other one, as we would all know, is the great Thomas Jefferson, who founded the University of Virginia. The only other president who can lay claim to be a founder is my grandfather, William Henry Harrison. Oddly enough, and an odd coincidence, guess what the name of Vincennes University was right before it became Vincennes University? Jefferson University. In an odd coincidence. And that is in my opinion, one of the greatest accomplishments of my grandfather. Being only one of 2 presidents to found a university or college. And one that was so successful, it survives today. Which is very, very blessing, to say the least. Now, I want to make a comment about my lovely wife, Caroline. She and I were partners in everything. She was a devoted wife, a great mother to our children, a great grandmother to our children. And as some of you heard with the previous speaker, she was very artistic and very intelligent, bright. And one of her great accomplishments was the creation of our beloved home here in Indianapolis, which was built in 1874, 1875, which survives today as the Harrison Presidential Site. And she can lay claim to much of what that ultimately became. And then when I was elected president and we went to the White House, certainly she became well known in terms of her efforts to save the White House, which was literally crumbling, rat infested. The place was a nightmare. And I believe
Oh, really? Of course, it hadn't turned out that way, and now I suppose you folks read the newspapers, but maybe you haven't had a chance to visit lives and sit down and visit with me. It's been a full time. I've been in the Army 2.5 years. First time I got to come back home to Indiana. I tell you, it's great to be back. Now, I'm on a veterans furlough, I had 20 days. I'm not from here in Indianapolis. The fact is, I'm on my way home. I, of course, we're fighting to save the Union. In fact, some of my friends weren't all that pleased with President Lincoln when he issued the Emancipation Proclamation. So we didn't join the Army to end slavery. We don't give a hoot about that. We joined to save the Union. Well, one way or another, we are involved in this thing. I didn't come here to talk politics with you. I want to tell you some reasons why we soldiers joined the Army. Maybe you never really thought about all that much. Now, this is a small, we're all friends here. I'm going to ask you a question. Now, please be honest with me. How many of you have ever done something just because your friends were doing it? All right, I'm thinking that you're raising your hands whether you are or not. I think we all do from time to time. Well, in 1861, the popular thing for a young man to do was join the Army. And these boys that wanted a girlfriend in 1861 about had to join the Army. Not that the girls went in the Army, that'll never happen. What I'm saying is this, many of the young ladies didn't want anything to do with a man too cowardly to wear the uniform of his country. Adventure. Excitement. You know, most of us, we'd never been very far away from home. We thought this would be a good chance to see the countryside at the government's expense. I didn't join right away. As you can easily tell, I'm a good deal older than the average soldier. I'd say the average age these days, probably 23, 24. I'm well beyond that. I got a wife and 3 children back home. You know, when I came home and told my wife I was thinking about joining the Army, she about went through the roof. She said, well, maybe I better not tell you what she said, but anyway, she's pretty upset. And what it boiled down to was this: William, don't run off and get yourself killed in some fool war that everybody knows is going to end in 2 or 3 months. Let the young folks handle it. Well, I figured she's making pretty good sense, so I didn't join up right away. But as we all know, things didn't turn out that way. And in the summer of '61, President Lincoln began calling for more troops. So I began to think about it again, and I remember picking up a newspaper, the old Newcastle Courier, read about this big rally they were going to have on the courthouse lawn on this Saturday in August for the purpose of putting together another regiment to go off and fight in the war. Well, when that Saturday came along, my friends and I, we saddled up and rode off to town. We actually got there a little bit late. They'd already started. In fact, this brass band was up there on the courthouse steps playing these military marches. They weren't playing them all that well, but they were getting through them. Men were marching around these brand new uniforms, brass all polished up, swords clanging on their sides, people waving flags and cheering. Pretty exciting. Then some fella gets up there and starts giving a speech. Well, after about an hour, it's pretty easy to tell he was a politician and a lawyer. A dangerous combination. Finally, the colonel of what was to become the 36th Indiana, he started talking. And you know what he had to say? It made a lot of sense to me. It's pretty short and sweet, really. What it boiled down to was this: how can you justify staying home, enjoying the comforts of your fireside, the safety of Indiana, when your friends and neighbors are going south to fight a war to keep this country together? I didn't really have a good answer for that. I decided it was as much my responsibility as the next man. So I signed up right there on the spot. So did most of my friends. But since you were honest with me, I'm going to be honest with you. I pretty much had my mind made up as soon as I heard that band, bad as they were. Saw those fancy uniforms. We thought we'd look pretty good in these blue suits. And we had war fever, something awful. You know what what do you think your biggest fear would be upon joining the Army during a time of war? Being killed. That's a smart answer. And we thought about that, believe me. But for many of us, our biggest fear was not dying. Our biggest fear was that the war was going to end before we had a chance to see a battle. Let me tell you something. I've seen enough battles to last me a lifetime. I hope I never see another. Well, anyway, they sent us over to Richmond, Indiana, to a place called Camp Wayne. Now, Camp Wayne's a training camp. They're all over the state. It's where we learned how to be soldiers, so we thought. Most of what we did at Camp Wayne was drill. That is, we'd march all day learning all these different maneuvers. Now, in order for a soldier to do a proper drill, he really needs to have a rifle. We didn't have any rifles. They hadn't arrived yet. But our Colonel, William Gross, he didn't let that stop him. He made us use broomsticks and cornstalks. Nothing make a grown man feel any more patriotic than marching around with a cornstalk on his shoulder in front of a bunch of women and children, but that's what we did. But you know, the folks in Richmond, they were good to us. They come out and bring us people dying every day. Now, I don't know if you ever thought about somebody dying from the measles. You know, if you're a young person, you get the measles, you'll probably be fine. You know, but you're a little older. Those so-called childhood diseases, of course, they're a lot harder on an older person than they are a young person. And we were sleeping outside in freezing weather, raining, snowing, not enough tents, not enough blankets. And a lot of times what will happen, those things like the measles, they'll progress into other complications like pneumonia. And people were dying left and right. You know, as a matter of fact, and I believe this from what I've seen, they tell me that for every man we've lost to a bullet during this war, we've lost 4 more to some kind of a sickness. Well, time went on. I must say I was getting pretty disgusted with Army life. I joined up to fight, hadn't even seen my first enemy soldier yet, missing my family, wondering why I was even there. We finally ran into some rebels down on the Green River down in Kentucky. We fired a few shots at them. They fired a few rounds back at us. Nobody was hit, I recall. And we marched on into Tennessee. And it was there in Tennessee in April of 1862. That's when I got my first real taste of what this war is all about. And I reckon I can tell you a little bit at least about my first real battlefield experience. But before I do that, I want to explain something to you about the Union Army. I'm sure you probably know this, but the Union Army at that time and here today in '64 was divided into several large armies. 2 that I want to talk about. First of all, the Army of the Ohio under General Don Carlos Buell. That's the part of the Army I was with at that time. Secondly, the Army of the Tennessee under General Ulysses S. Grant. Now, those 2 big armies, we were camped in southwest Tennessee about 8 miles apart. Word was we were going to join up with Grant, march into northern Mississippi, catch the rebels down there, hopefully end the war in the west. We were camped at the town of Savannah. Grant's army was camped at this little place on the Tennessee River called Pittsburgh Landing. I bet you couldn't have found 10 men in the whole army who never heard of Pittsburgh Landing before that day. I'll tell you something, any man who was there those next 2 days, he'll never forget it as long as he lives. Sunday morning, April 6, 1862. Beautiful morning. The sun was shining, robins hopping about on the grass, smell of peach blossoms on the breeze. Looked like it's going to be pretty, you know, it can get hot down there in Tennessee in April. And it was a Sunday, and on a Sunday in an Army camp, we generally do 2 things. First of all, we have company inspection. It takes up the whole morning. Then in the afternoon, we'll have our church services. I was looking forward to that. I'd made some preparations around, you know, for the inspection and all. When I began to hear a sound to the south of us, well, it sounded a lot like thunder at first. I looked up, there wasn't a storm cloud in sight. I knew what it was, we all did. We hoped it would go away, but it didn't. And in fact, it wasn't long until we were beginning to hear another sound that disturbed us far greater. A much quieter sound, actually. It's kind of hard to describe. I guess the best way I can describe it would be to tell you it was a higher pitched, very faint, almost a popping or a rattling sound. Well, we knew what that was too. Oh, that first sound? Artillery, cannon fire. The second sound? The sound of thousands of small arms being fired from a distance of 8 miles away. Friends, it takes a tremendous amount of small arms fired for the sound to carry that far. And we knew it was a bigger fight than anything we'd ever seen. We waited and waited. It seemed like forever. Finally, about noon, old General William Nelson rode into the blanket draped across my shoulders and tied on the ends over here. And I suppose we'd marched, maybe a mile and a half at the most. I began to get so hot I couldn't stand it. And obviously everybody else was too, because they began to take their blanket, their overcoat, whatever they had, started throwing them off the side of the road. Looked like a good idea to me at the time. I threw my blanket away too. Figured I wouldn't need it anymore. Behind rocks, jumping in the river, trying to swim across, some of them drowning, others being shot, trying to escape. I bet there must have been between 12 and 15,000 of us. Here we'd been called up as reinforcements. These people weren't even fighting. Thought they were the biggest cowards we'd ever seen. Very young, poorly trained, 15, 16, 17 years old in some cases. So poorly trained, I learned later on, some of those boys had just received their rifle the day before and had never been taught how to load it. Anybody would have been scared. A steamboat. Got to the other bank, we couldn't even get off the boat. The troops from Grant's army were blocking the landing. We were ordered to fix bayonets and threaten them to get them to move off. General Nelson about rode some of them down with his horse for getting off that boat, waving his sword over.
He put his legs up in the air and left filthy footprints all over the ceiling of the cabin. My stepmammy came home, took one look at that, got the biggest kick out of it, and then she handed me the mine. She brought lots of furniture back from Kentucky and a family of her own. 2 girls, Matilda and Elizabeth, and a young boy named John. So I had instant playmates. But the best part of all, my stepmammy owned many books. Now, in addition to my mother's Bible, I had Aesop's Fables, Dilworth's Speller, Pilgrim's Progress, Robinson Crusoe, and Arabian Nights. My cousin Dennis called that last book a pack of lies. But I said they were mighty fine lies. See, my mother and my stepmammy could both read a little bit, but they couldn't write. My father, Thomas, signed his name with an X. My father could not read or write. I could do both. By the age of 10, I had an outstanding vocabulary. I conducted all the written correspondence on behalf of our family. It was quite an achievement of distinction. You might even say I was a gifted child. Now, why did I have so much time for reading and for writing? Very simple. My father and I managed to complete all the farming chores in 140 days, which left plenty of time for leisure pursuits. So I became a supreme wrestler. And a champion crowbar thrower. Very popular sport in my neighborhood. But more often than not, you find me propped up on my elbows, poring over my Bible until daylight. I wrote these historic words. Good boys who to their books apply will all be great men by and by. Abraham Lincoln is my name. With my pen, I wrote the same. I wrote in both haste and speed, and left it here for fools to read. Abraham Lincoln, his hand and pen. He will be good, but God knows when. Altogether, my formal education, less than 300 days. Because the schoolhouse was a 4.5-mile journey from our little cabin. I went to a blab school. That's where the teacher says something and all the kids repeat at the same time. I'll give you an example. 1 times 2 is 2.
1 times 2 is 2.
We have much to do. 2 times 2 is 4.
2 times 2 is 4.
Some books are on the floor.
Some books are on the floor.
2 times 3 is 6.
2 times 3 is 6.
That smelly boy is playing tricks.
That smelly boy is playing tricks.
2 times 4 is 8.
2 times 4 is 8.
My teacher is running late. 2 times 5 is 10. Memory 2. I would listen to a sermon from the preacher. I'd run home after church. I'd gather all the other children together. I'd hop up on a tree stump and I'd recite that sermon word for word. One weekend I was at a revival meeting and the subject was temperance. The itinerant preacher said, we need to take the beer and the ale and pour it into the river. We need to take the whiskey and the rye and pour it into the river. We need to take the wine and the port and the sap and pour it into the river. And I heard the biggest amens you ever could have imagined. Then he turned to the deacon and said, now, let us all sing together number 122. The deacon opened his book and stared at us with a blank expression because the hymn was, shall we gather at the river? One Sunday morning I was in work. He forgot to teach me how to love. He said I was lazy because I hated working out in the hot sun. My father would often rent me out to a neighbor, force me to labor all day long. Then my father would collect my wages. I know what it is to be a slave. No man should treat another like property. That's why when I was your age, instead of working in the fields, I'd much rather talk. Crack jokes, tell stories, daydream. And what's my favorite activity, son? Exactly. Mother put the scripture in my hands. She said, Abraham, that's not just a book. That's a life. And my father, one weekend, took me to the local grist mill. I saw it was powered by a team of horses going around and around in a circle. I was mesmerized. I stared at those beautiful beasts so long, one of them kicked me in the back of the head. I laid on the ground for more than half an hour. Folks thought I was dead. I fooled them. Because I'm hard-headed. That's a trait you find among many who love the president. By the time I was 15, I was nearly my full height, 6'4", and my friends called me dark and ungainly with long shanks. One congressman said I look like I'm built exclusively for standing out in very deep water. At 16, I got a job on a ferry boat. Two gentlemen I was helping each tossed me a silver $50. Can you believe that? A poor Hoosier boy like me earning $1 in less than a day. When I was 18, the first long essay I ever wrote was published. I gave it to a Baptist minister. He was a good friend of mine. He was so impressed, he sent my piece to a newspaper in Ohio. They printed it on the front page. My essay was all about the evils of alcohol, because at that time, the average American drank 4 gallons of whiskey every year. I sampled it a time or two that I never could tolerate the stuff. It left me feeling flabby and unpleasant. I think that's why my mother always used to say, alcohol is the devil's girl. Rifle and killed that beautiful wild turkey when I was dying. My precious mother passed me. And her grave on a nearby hill was a painful daily reminder. And now, my sweet sister Sarah gone. Sarah wasn't just my sibling, she'd been my best friend. We had played together, read books together. She took good care of me too. I couldn't tolerate life now in a miserable little farm without her. I took a job on a flatboat carrying produce, fruits, vegetables, livestock, all the way down to Louisiana. 1,222 miles from our home in Spencer County. 7 Negroes attempted to rob and kill my cousin John and me. We were docked in Baton Rouge. I was injured in that altercation. We managed to drive those Negroes off the boat. That didn't upset me as much as arriving in New Orleans, watching my very first slave walk. They took a family of 4. They sold a man first, and his wife, and the 2 children. Each to the highest bid. Nice little family, split up forever. And I swore to John at that moment, I said, cousin, if I'm ever in a position to do anything about slavery nonsense, do it. I said, I'll pick that slavery thing and hit it. Oh, see that auction of human being, haunt me for decades to come. I was Macon County, next to the Sangamon River, and I helped him build another cabin, but I was all grown up by then. High time I made my own way in the world, so I took a job as a store clerk in the town of New Salem. But after 4 weeks, the shop went broke. I know what they say, money does not guarantee happiness. But Honest Abe is here to remind you, the absence of money is guaranteed to make you miserable. In 1832, I ran for the state legislature at the exact time I should have been out shaking hands and making campaign promises. The Black Hawk War with the Indians intervened, and I lost that election because I was too busy serving as captain of our volunteer regiment in the state militia. Years later, I would joke that my entire military career consisted of charging upon wild flowers and waging vicious, bloody battles against armies of mosquitoes. A friend persuaded me to borrow some more money and start another store, which I did. But that shop went broke too. Furthermore, my friend drank himself to death. That devil's urine, and left me holding the debt, $1,800. It took me 17 years to pay back the loan for that store, but I did. And I won the next election as Illinois State Representative, and I was encouraged to study law. I thought that was a good idea, but I didn't have any money to go to school. So how did I become a successful prairie lawyer? Well, the same way I accomplished everything in life. By reading books, not just the good book, but the best book. And I also read Blackstone's Precepts, and I went to work for John T. Stewart's firm for a number of years. Then I joined Stephen Logan, and to Springfield, Illinois, where I was now living, came two girls named Mary, both of whom I courted. The first, the daughter of a well-fixed farmer, Mary Owens. She was about my age. And wait. No, I'm just teasing. Actually, she was much heavier. But she was fairly attractive for a hippopotamus. And then, of course, I met Mary Todd, 9 years my junior, from the richest, most prominent family in Lexington, Kentucky. That's Todd with 2 D's. God needs only one in his name, and the Todds are so important they require two. I was introduced to Mary at a cotillion. I said, Miss Todd, I want to dance with you in the worst way. At the end of the evening, she said, you certainly did. But I kept chasing her. After one broken engagement, we finally made it to the altar, November 4th, 1842, and became husband and wife. Like most couples, we were very poor starting out. At our honeymoon, the only thing we had to eat was the rice they tossed at the wedding ceremony. Now talk about opposites attracting. Mary and I were both born in Kentucky, but she's short, plump, and cute. I'm tall, skinny, and ugly. And I found marriage is a lot like taking a bath. After you're in it for a while, it's not so hot. That's why they call me Honest Abe. Because of our height difference, Mary and I will arrive at a social gathering. I'll announce in a loud, clear voice, here we are, Mr. and Mrs. A. Lincoln. That's the long and short of it. We had 4 sons. Oh, how I adored my boys. I once wrote, our children are free and unrestrained from parental tyranny. Love is the only chain whereby to lock the child to its parent. First came our son Robert. Then our second born, Edward, died from a combination of fear and tuberculosis. Eddie was only 3 years and 10 months. Our third son was named William. We call him Willie. Our fourth was named Thomas, after my pop, his grandpa. Thomas was the baby of the family. He was always wiggling and squiggling around. His head was too big for his body. He looked just like a tadpole. That's what he reminded me of, so we nicknamed him. Thank you for remembering. And one day, early in 1862, I looked out the window. I saw my two youngest boys, Willie and Tad, riding ponies on the front lawn of the White House out in the rain. In January, I hollered at them, "You get your tails inside right now!" They came in coughing and sneezing. Both of my sons had caught terrible colds, but Willie never recovered. I sat up night after night, tried to nurse him back to health, but there was nothing I could do. He was only 11 years old. Willie passed away. And even a month after he had died, my wife sat in a dark room in the White House and staring passively out the window. One evening I entered. I placed my hand on her shoulder. I said, "Mary, honey, I know Willie was too good for this world. I know he was taken from us so suddenly, but darling, the Almighty has His own purposes. You must feel better. You have other boys to look after. I have the country to run. Do you see that white building down the road? Darling, that's the insane asylum. If you don't feel better soon, I may have to place you there. You see, it wasn't just the deaths of Eddie and our favorite boy Willie, but my wife lost a brother, stepbrother, and a brother-in-law fighting with Willie. Perhaps you can understand now why she suffered so. Folks realize I'm the only lawyer in history with the nickname Honest. I got a law about her perfume. Another time I walked 12 miles to return a few pennies. They started calling me Honest Abe, the shopkeeper, because I believe in honesty. That's what I told a group of law students years later. In 1850, I was asked to speak at their graduation ceremony. I said, "So you all want to be lawyers? That's a good job, helping people. It's an important job, too. In fact, I bet you didn't know, there's a team of lawyers sitting at the highest level in the kingdom of heaven. Because lawyers put the fear of God into folks faster than the Almighty Himself." So, if you want to be a good lawyer, you want to be an effective lawyer, obviously you've worked hard, you've studied hard. I'm very proud of you. But if you truly want to make a difference, all you have to do is remember one thing. Just be honest. Please, promise me that you will. And if y'all can't be honest lawyers, be honest without becoming lawyers. Choose some other profession. I appreciate it. Well, that reminds me, I was in court back in Illinois, and I asked the witness how old he was. 60, he said. Now, it was quite apparent to me and to everyone else in that courtroom he was far older than that, so I asked him again, "Sir, what's your age?" 60, he insisted. Finally, I appealed to the judge. The judge chastised the witness. He said, "Everyone here knows you're older than 60, so by gosh, tell the truth." The witness blushed. He realized he'd been caught. He said, Oh, Your Honor, you're thinking of the 10 years I lived in Indiana." He said, "Sir, that was so much time lost, it don't count." In 1858, I was nominated as a candidate for the United States Senate, running against the Honorable Judge Stephen A. Douglas. I said, "Ladies and gentlemen, as this campaign continues, Judge Douglas grows more and more desperate. He is now trying to make capital out of the claim that I once worked at a New Salem grocery store that sold whiskey." Now, what the judge says is true. Oh, yes. But what he did not say is that he was my best customer. I promise, I have since left my side of the counter. The judge still sticks to his. Judge Douglas is only 5'4", a whole foot shorter than me. he used to court my wife, Mary. We call him the Little Johnny, because he's got a big head and a big mouth. He's always making fun of my appearance. I think he's jealous of me. One time he said, "Tell us, Lincoln, exactly how long should a man's legs be?" I thought for a moment and said, I suppose long enough to reach from his body to the ground. Perhaps our most famous exchange on the debate trail, he had the nerve to call me Two-Faced. I said, "My dear Mr. Douglas, if indeed I have two faces, do you honestly think I'd be wearing this one?" Oh, that's very Now, I want you to know I had a lot of failures in my life before I became president. Hey, Sonny, do you help me count up all the times I failed before I reached the White House? Is that a yes or a no? See, when a lawyer asks a question, he expects a response. Just say yes, sir. My education is defective. Less than 300 days. I was a lazy farmhand, but I was the fastest rail splitter in the county. I could cut logs quicker than anyone and raise a fence horse high, bull strong, and pig tight. For those of you who didn't grow up on a farm, that's high enough so that a horse can't leap over it, strong enough so that a bull can't knock it down, and tight enough so that a piggy can't wiggle through. But my father called me lazy because I'd much rather. I failed in my first attempt at business as a shopkeeper. I failed in my second attempt at business as a shopkeeper. I failed as a miller, as a carpenter, as a blacksmith, as a farmer. I failed as a postmaster, even though I was appointed by President Andrew Jackson. I didn't last long as a surveyor. What are we up to? And of the 12 elections I was involved in, I lost 9 of them. How many times did I fail?
19.
I don't care how many times. You don't quit. You don't ever give up. That's the lesson I want you to learn. That last election I lost was vital. It was for the U.S. Senate. I prepared a speech to accept the nomination, showed it to some of my colleagues. They requested I not deliver that speech. They said improper, inappropriate, outrageous. But I knew the time had come because my law partner, Billy Herndon, said, "Lincoln, if you are to go down with these words, make sure you go down with the truth." My speech was based on Scripture, of course, the book of Matthew, chapter 12, verse 25. "A house divided against itself cannot stand." I believe this government cannot endure permanently half slave and half free. I do not expect the Union to be dissolved. I do not expect the house to fall, but I do expect it will cease to be divided. It will become all one thing or all the other. My paramount objective in this struggle is to save the Union. It's not either to save or to destroy slavery. If I could save the Union without freeing any slave, I would do it. If I could save it by freeing all the slaves, I would do it. If I could save it by freeing some, leaving others alone, I would also do that. What I do about slavery, what I do about the colored race, I do because I believe it helps to save you. In 1860, I received a letter from an 11-year-old girl named Grace Bedell. She was living in Westfield, New York. She saw a picture of me in the newspaper during campaign season. She suggested I might have a better chance of winning the presidency if I grew a beard, because she thought my face was too thin. She said ladies like fellas with whiskers, and they like to tease their hairy husbands, and their hairy husbands would vote for you because you look just like them. And she said, "I promise my father and my brothers will vote for you because they all have whiskers too." The newspapers at the time drew these vicious cartoons lampooning my appearance, saying I was running around the country threatening gentlemen, "If you don't vote for me, I'll marry your sister." Well, I won that election in the fall of 1860, in spite of my homely countenance. I left Springfield, Illinois, February 1861 with these words: "To this place and to the kindness of these people I owe everything. I now leave with a task before me greater than that which rested upon George Washington, trusting in God, who can go with me and remain with you and be everywhere for good. Let us confidently hope that all will yet be well. Here, I have lived a quarter of a century, and I have passed from a young to an old man. Here, my precious children have been born, and one is buried. I now leave not knowing when or whether ever I may return. March 4th, 1861, I took the official oath as our 16th president. Already 7 states had withdrawn. And I said, in your hands, my dissatisfied fellow countrymen, not in mine, is the momentous issue of civil war. The government will not assail you. You can have no conflict without yourselves being the aggressors. We are not enemies, but friends. We must not be enemies. Though passions may have strayed, they must not break our bonds of affection. The mystic cords of memory, stretching from every battlefield and patriot grave to every living heart and hearthstone, all over this broad land, will yet swell the chorus of the Union, when again touched, as surely they will be, by the better angels of our nature. Manage the affairs of this nation for your people. Oh God, your nation. Please save us. This zeal for the spread of slavery, I cannot but hate. I hate it because of the monstrous injustice of slavery itself. I hate slavery because it deprives our Republican example of its just influence in the world, and it enables the enemies of free institutions to taunt us and mock us as hypocrites. Although volume upon volume is written to prove slavery a very good thing, tell me, do you ever hear of the man who wishes to take the good of it by becoming a slave himself? Whenever I hear anyone arguing or advocating for slavery, I feel a strong impulse to stick right on it. If slavery is not wrong, if slavery is not evil, January 1st, 1863, my wife Mary and I hosted our customary reception at the Executive Mansion. We threw open doors around 11 o'clock that morning, started shaking hands with hundreds of folks as they appears in our Constitution, until my amendment which eliminates it forever. But the war continued. The Union suffered extremely heavy losses. In the spring of 1863, the Senate called on me to lead a national day of prayer, which I did. But things got worse because war of any stripe is terrible. In our case especially so, this conflict pitted father against son, brother against brother, and the loss was indescribable. Property, limbs. The war touched every single household in the country. At least 620,000 lives, claiming 2% of the American population. At a military hospital at City Point, Virginia, Commander Charles Houghton, who was only 20 years old, was lying on a narrow cot, his leg blown off by a cannon. I entered this military hospital, little more than a large tent, really. Sunlight streaming through the flaps. I went from bed to bed, saying a few words of encouragement to each wounded man. Finally, I came upon the board. This is Houghton, who so bravely and almost single-handedly defended Fort Haskell, a strategic point behind General Grant's lines. He's so young. A nurse brought a stool, placed it next to him. He couldn't have known I was there. He was drifting in and out of consciousness. I reached out. I took one of his colorless, wasted hands in mine, and I said, "My dear boy, I am so proud. to be your fellow countryman. Houghton opened his eyes and smiled. Having temporarily forgotten all the horror and grief of combat, he looked into my very melancholy eyes. Then he drifted back to sleep. Chief Surgeon McDonald said, "The boy will never live throughout the night. He'll certainly die before morning." And so I asked to see the monstrous wound that had taken his leg and was taking his precious life. The attending nurses protested, but I insisted. I said, "The evils of war are for me to bear also." Finally, the bandages, long and bloody, were unwrapped, and I saw his missing leg. Oh, this awful blood. And everyone in that military hospital would be going. I took Houghton's face between my hands and I kissed him tenderly on the forehead. I said, "My boy, you must live!" Houghton stiffened. He struggled to bring one hand up to his eyebrow. This is as close as he could come to a formal salute. I leaned over to hear his feeble words. He said, "I intend to, sir." I'm pleased to report that he did survive. When the war began, Benjamin Harrison had already distinguished himself here in Indianapolis as a prominent attorney. He took an active interest in politics, joined the Republican Party in our opposition to slavery. In 1862, Harrison helped form the 70th Indiana Infantry and was given command of a regiment as colonel. He believed in strict, systematic drilling. Soon brought his men to excellent fighting form. He saw his first action at Russellville, Kentucky. Spent the next 15 months in Kentucky and Tennessee with his regiment. Now in 1864, his command was attached to Sherman's army and fought in the Atlanta campaign. The unit saw its fiercest action in Georgia, where Harrison was among the first to storm the Confederate position. After the Battle of Nashville, Benjamin Harrison was brevetted as a brigadier general for ability and manifest energy and gallantry. When time draws near, I'd like to leave you with a few words I spoke in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, November 19, 1863. There had been a battle earlier that year. They tell me 93,000 northern troops from 18 states had clashed with 75,000 southern troops from 11 states. July 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, we lost so many. I must remind you that freedom is not freedom. Freedom has a terrible cost, yet I would rather be assassinated on this spot than to lose a single star on our precious, sacred American flag, or to sacrifice a single ideal expressed in our Declaration of Independence. The most famous speaker of the day, former congressman and senator, Secretary of State, Governor of Massachusetts, President of Harvard University, Minister to England, and former vice presidential candidate in 1860, Dr. Edward Everett, addressed the crowd for 2 hours. I spoke for just 2.5 minutes. 10 sentences. 272 words. Stepping forward, I removed my hat. I spent several awkward moments turning my hat over in my hands. It was quite evident to the crowd that I was having difficulty controlling my emotion. 51,000 casualties in just 3 short days. I took out my speech. I believe it was Reverend Stockton who took my hat from me. I fumbled with my spectacles. I began with words that not only defined the direction of the war, but I pray a new direction for America. 77 years ago, our fathers brought forth upon this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now, we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on the great battlefield of that war. We've come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this, but in a larger sense we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here, have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion. That we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that the government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you, and may God bless America.
Folks, we're just about running on time. I will remind you that President Harrison...
I sure am glad you got to see me.
Let us pause in life's pleasures and count its many tears, while we all sub sorrow with the poor. There's a song that will linger forever in our ears. Oh, hard times come again no more. 'Tis the song, the sigh of the weary. Hard times come again no more. Many days you have lingered around my cabin door. Oh, hard times come again no more. While we seek mirth and beauty and music bright and gay, there are frail forms fainting at the door. Though their voices are silent, their pleading looks will say, oh, hard times come again no more. 'Tis the song, the sigh of the weary. Hard times come again no more. Many days you have lingered around my cabin door. Oh, hard times come again no more. There's a sigh that is wafting across the troubled wave. 'Tis a wail heard upon the shore. 'Tis a dirge that is murmured around the lowly grave. Oh, hard times come again no more. 'Tis the song, the sigh of the weary. Hard times come again no more. Many days you have lingered around my cabin door. Oh, hard times come again no more. Many days you have lingered around my cabin door. Oh, hard times come again no more. audience.
Roll it.
You want a civil war song, or you want to?
Yeah, let's do something they'd like in here, because we never know, they might want to put it on the website.